And if you're not familiar with this game, this is a cooperative campaign game where players are going to be playing asymmetrical characters, each with their own special ability, their own deck of cards that you can change, modify, and upgrade throughout the campaign. And this is a campaign that you're always going to be playing with 4 characters, regardless of how many players you actually have at the table. But one thing that I think is really interesting about this, and one of the reasons that this one is my own personal pick of the week, is because of the options that it gives the players. If you're playing with less than 4 players, then you're going to have at least one player playing multiple characters, but the game also gives you a simplified version of each character so that if you don't want that overhead of playing multiple characters, you can actually just play one of the characters as your main character, and the actions of your secondary character will be a little bit more automated and simplified, so you don't have to worry about them as much, but it will still keep the game balanced. And of course, this game comes with some fantastic miniatures, but there is also a unique aspect to them because each of the miniatures has swappable arms and weapons, so that as you find new weapons throughout the campaign, you can actually swap those parts out on your miniature to match whatever type of weapon you currently have. And the game offers over 20 different chapters that each take about 2 to 3 hours to play, and each chapter is going to be taking place over 2 phases. Your first phase is going to have more choose your own adventure type aspects, where you're going to be exploring areas on the board, engaging in different points of interest, and making decisions that are going to affect the campaign moving forward and affect what sort of resources and abilities you have available to you when you go and fight that final boss. And one thing that I really love about this, and it's one of the reasons that I made this my pick of the week, is that this phase is actually completely skippable. And I know a lot of you might think, I don't really want to skip parts of the game, I want to play the entire game through and through. And maybe a lot of you will do that, but I also know that a lot of us probably aren't able to play over 20 different chapters. And if you start feeling like you're getting to the point where you're not able to finish the campaign, I think this is just a really great option to kind of blast through the more exciting parts of the game. And it still does update you on the story. It's just going to be a little bit more on rails, so you're going to be missing out on a few of the decision-making aspects, but you will still get that full story and that full campaign. And I do think in general you will get more out of the game if you're actually able to complete it, even if you're not able to do every single thing. But it's this point in the game where there are a lot of decisions that go in multiple different branching arcs that can tell a completely different story depending on what your decisions are. And there are a ton of options here, but the catch is that there is only limited time. You're only able to make a few actions each phase, which is going to limit you to a subset of the options that are available. So even if you do play each of these phases, you still won't see everything, which also does put you in a great position to play the game a second time if you do ever find the time. And the game is going to come with a whole bunch of booklets that will provide the narrative of the game and also present different decisions and provide outcomes to those decisions depending on how the players perform. But I just can't emphasize enough how much this game tailors to the different playstyles and different preferences for the different players that might be playing this game, because if you're not interested in reading the narrative yourself, there is also a companion app that you can use instead. And a really cool thing about this is that it is completely narrated by James Cosmo from Game of Thrones. So if you want to feel like you're in the Night's Watch, there is always an option for that. But as players make their decisions and the narrative unfolds, you're inevitably going to be getting into a boss battle. And the game offers all sorts of boxes that are going to have all sorts of different miniatures within them. And these are going to be discovered slowly as you're exploring the game, but most of them are going to be deadly beasts that are trying to kill you. And although I think they did a whole bunch of stuff right with everything else in the game, this is really where the meat of the game lies. And this is really where players are going to feel the weight of their decisions and if they paid off or put them in a worse position. And of course, this is where the game starts to get a little bit more high stakes, because this is where players can actually be defeated. And the way that combat works in this game is that there's both a spatial element as well as a hand management element. Players are going to move around the board trying to attack the enemy and get in opportune positions, because there are going to be weak spots, but then where you're standing relative to the enemy might also provoke certain attacks, because if you're standing in front of them, you're more likely to get bitten, but if you're standing behind them, you might be more likely to get tail whipped. But in order to actually attack or defend, players are going to be spending energy tokens in order to activate their combat cards. And these can have all sorts of different effects for you to take advantage of, but each card's also going to have a number on it, and that essentially determines how long that card's going to be out of play until you can use it again, but there are some ways to manipulate this. When dealing damage, players can either choose to roll dice or draw cards, and there is a push your luck aspect here, because you can roll as many dice as you want or draw as many cards as you want, but if you happen to get too many blanks, then it's going to bust and your attack is going to completely miss. And if you prefer dice over cards or cards over dice, you can just continue to use one or the other, but just know that using the cards will be a little bit more balanced because there's only a set number of each value within the deck of cards. Whereas with the dice, anything's possible anytime you roll a die, so you can get a lot more swingy results, but you also have opportunity to get some really big hits. The game also features exploding dice, so if you're rolling a certain icon, it will allow you to roll another die for free. And these are really nice because even if you do roll blanks, they won't cause you to bust. And you can also potentially roll more exploding dice, which will cascade and cause you to roll even more dice, which can really ramp up to some amazing attacks. Each boss is different in this game, and they'll each have their own abilities, strengths, and weaknesses. And some of the bosses can even go through multiple phases where different events or transformations can happen as the battle progresses. The new campaign's primarily focused on the second edition reprint of the first game, where all the original pledge levels will be available, plus a few new extras as well. And for returning backers, there will be an upgrade pack that brings a new pair of rulebooks, some new ability cards, and some new special ability rule boards that will tighten up the existing encounters. And if you're not interested in paying for that, there is also a digital version provided as well. But if you do want to buy the upgrade and you are a returning backer, you will get a 10% discount. And there will be a brand new secret box that's free to all the first day backers. So if this one does sound interesting to you, you'll definitely want to subscribe so that you don't miss out on that freebie. And I probably should have said this earlier, but this one is also our Discord pick of the week, and there's no surprise there, a ton of excitement around this game. Definitely recommend checking it out, and you can find links in the description below.